So often when we talk to people or write, we want to describe an incident, something amusing or unusual that has happened. If we tell the incident in an interesting way, if we present a clear picture of what happened, it can be a source of enjoyment to both the teller and the listener. Or it can go this way.
Say, that reminds me of what happened to us last week. You know, when Joan's father took the train. You know her. Joan Holden? Yes, I know her. Well, he lost his bag. Or, he thought he did. You see, we'd gone over to buy a magazine, and Joan was with me. And Joan's dad put down his bag when he went to buy a ticket. And, you see, Joan was helping me pick out a magazine for Mr. Holden to take with him on his trip. You see, he needed a magazine because he was going to be on the train for, 3 or 4 hours. He was going up to Williamstown on business with a Mr. Johnson, I think it was. No, Ronson, that was his name. Well, he couldn't find his bag, and the train almost pulled out without him. And then at the last moment, we found it, and he caught the train. It was real funny.
I'm thirsty. Anyone want a ball? What about you, Barb?
Nothing for me.
That was a mighty dry story, wasn't it? No interest, no colorful descriptions, not even clear what happened. Joan was there with Barbara. Let's hear her description of the same incident.
We'll talk about missing things. Did my father have a close call last Friday? Barbara Rust and I took him down to catch the train for Williamstown. The station was rather quiet and empty, the way the on ladies do.
Joan is adding color to her report. She's painting a mental picture, so you're there, at the station.
At the ticket window, a tall traveler fidgeted as the agent dawdled over his ticket. Another traveler hurried by the ticket line and arranged with a red cap to place his bag on the train. A little old lady, the grandmother type, you know, perched nervously on the edge of her seat, clutching a baggage check. And that was the setting as Father, Barbara, and I came in. Dad put down his bag and mapped out a plan. He'd go over and buy his ticket, while Barbara and I were to buy a magazine for him at the newsstand. When he had his ticket, we'd meet by Dad's bag at the end of the bench. As we headed for the magazine counter, Dad joined the ticket line. In spite of its slow progress, he figured that he still had time to make the train. The loudspeaker was just announcing, "Train for Williamstown, now loading on track 2. But the agent was making out a ticket that seemed a mile long, and he was operating with the speed of a snail. Father fumed at the delay. Barb and I were delayed, too. I found that the magazine was one we had at home, so we went back. Finally, Dad reached the ticket window. Time was short. People were already going to the train. So when we got back to the bench, I quickly traded him the magazine for a goodbye kiss. Well, he seemed to have everything he needed, so he started to go. But as he picked up his bag, he stopped short. The bag was not his. Someone had swapped suitcases. But where was Dad's bag? Had someone taken it home? Had someone checked it at the check room? With all those bags, we'd never have time to look for it. I imagined all sorts of things that could have happened. The little old lady, for instance. Could her tired old eyes have deceived her? Could she have had Father's bag checked onto a train for her? Suddenly, the loudspeaker boomed out.
"All aboard for Williamstown train. Last call. Train leaving on track 2.
Dad started to go without his bag, but it contained his business papers, and he couldn't go without them. Suddenly, Barb spoke. "Look, a tag with the owner's name. T.J. Sweeney. He must have Dad's bag." Snatching the bag, Dad sprinted to the ticket window, interrupting another traveler. He explained the situation and asked the agent to have Mr. Sweeney paged on the loudspeaker.
"Mr. T.J. Sweeney, come to the ticket window immediately. Mr. T.J. Sweeney."
We looked around hopefully, wondering if Dad would make the train. Where was Mr. Sweeney? Who was Mr. Sweeney? Suddenly he burst through from the train. He was the tall traveler we'd seen at the ticket window. When Dad showed him the name tag, he chuckled, a little embarrassed, and handed over the check for Dad's bag, which a red cap had checked onto the train for him. As Dad and Mr. Sweeney ran for the train, Barbara and I were happy and relieved. And as the train pulled out for Williamstown, they were both on it. And so were both bags, with about 5 seconds to spare. Now that's what I call close.
I'll say, that sounds really exciting.
The way you tell it, it's great.
Yes, the interesting description of an incident can be important, not only to your social life, but to your correspondence, both business and personal. To articles you might write for the school paper. To themes and term papers. Almost any time you write or speak, the ability to describe will serve you well. All right, in describing an incident, what are the points to consider? First, the opening. Does it create interest? Let's go back and consider the two descriptions we heard. Were you interested when Barbara started?
Last week. Oh, when Joan's dad took the train. You know her, Joan Hoban. Well,
Were you more interested when Joan started?
did my father have a close call last Friday? Barbara Rust and I took him down.
Second, is the story clear, in good order? Wasn't it confusing when Barbara skipped around?
See, we'd gone over to buy a magazine, and Joan was with me. And Mr. Hoban put down his bag when he went to buy his ticket. And Joan was helping me pick out a magazine for Mr. Hoban to take with him on his trip.
On the other hand, Joan carefully established the main characters and the situation in a clear order.
Tall traveler. Arranged with a red cap to place his bag on the train. A little old lady. Clutching a baggage check. Father, Barb, and I came in.
Third, are the descriptions complete, with proper detail, not too much? Did it bore you when Barbara rambled on with so much irrelevant detail?
He was going to be on the train for, 3 or 4 hours. He was going up to Williamstown on business with a Mr. Johnson, I think it was. No, Ronson, that was his name.
And yet the details she left out were so important. Remember how Joan used just enough detail to make her story complete? Details of contrast, figures of speech to build mood.
A ticket that seemed a mile long, operating with the speed of a snail. Father fumed at the delay.
Descriptive and factual details complete the plot of the story.
So we went back, checked it at the check room. We'd never have time. Tired old eyes. T.J. Sweeney. First through. Tall traveler.
Those are important details. Fourth, how is the ending? Does it build to a climax? Does it end smoothly and quickly after the climax?
And as the train pulled out for Williamstown, they were both on it, and so were both the bags, with about 5 seconds to spare.
Yes, Joan held suspense right to the end. Over all these considerations, is it a colorful word picture? Is the scene brought to life for your audience? Remember these things when it's your turn to describe an incident.